Hey folks, Steve here, and I can bet you have a pretty good idea what this video will be about if you read the video title. This will probably be a quick one. I just want to hit a couple of things. I am looking to restart the Case Yellow series that I've been doing. And I know that I have finished turn 4, so we're almost halfway through the game. And I don't necessarily like the idea of doing this, but I feel like I really need to. And when I say a restart, that means yes, I'm going to re-rack the game. I'm going to put it all back for scenario one, and I'm going to go through it again. Not necessarily all on camera to the degree that I've done up to this point. So I want to address why that is, and then kind of talk about the format moving forward, and hopefully you guys will be okay with that. And if you're not okay with it, I guess too bad, because this is the way things are going to be. Um, I know that viewership of my videos tends to, drop off as I go through a series, and then folks will kind of come back at the conclusion and the review video. And it occurred to me as I was prepping for turn 5, and I was reading through the rules. I was going, oh no, I've been playing several things quite wrong. um, Quite wrong for both sides, so it almost is even. And you could maybe say, well, Steve, if you've been playing it wrong, is what's on the board here close enough to what it should be that you can just keep going? And I thought about it, and what I'm just worried about is the nature of what I got wrong has just made this game state a bit invalid to me, even if it looks okay at a surface level. There's so many of the ifs and the buts. If I had played things correctly, that I would much rather spend the rest of these 6 turns playing a correct game than a flawed game, or a game that is based off of a flawed first 4 turns. So what are the principal things that I feel like I got wrong? It really comes down to the difference between minor rivers and major rivers. And I'm going to be honest, this is bad on my part, because the terrain chart makes it relatively clear. You've got to read a couple blocks of text to make sure that you actually have it right. But I don't know if it's just, life is a time crunch, and I got a little uh, loose with what I was reading. A lot of the time, I was treating minor rivers as if they were major rivers for combat. So the really big thing here is, against the Germans, there have been a number of times where I have simply not attacked over a river, or decided not to, or didn't even try to cross the river, because I thought that motorized units could not attack over a minor river hex side. That is not true. In fact, German units can most certainly, German motorized units, really any motorized units, can certainly attack across a minor river hex side. They still suffer the penalty of a shift to the left, but they can definitely do it. This is sort of adverse to um, the major river hex side in the Rhine, where units can only attack at the crossings. So when we think about that in the game terms, right? Like, once I started doing that, and this really matters the most for the major rivers in the Netherlands, way up here, you can just kind of see those darker blue lines at the top of your screen. Then you have the Meuse as a major river. Then you have the Marne and the Seine down here. These are major rivers. But pretty much everything else, so all the rivers in this area right here, are minor rivers, which means that I can attack across them, I can move across them, I still pay the movement penalties, but I could have attacked Dunkirk from this marsh hex, which is right here, with that unit that got there. I attacked here instead, thinking I had to get on a crossing hex side to be able to attack at all, and that's not true. And if I had been able to attack better, or had structured things a bit better, I maybe could have taken Dunkirk, but it's kind of too late for that. There's a lot of too lates, and why, and this is sort of generating why I want to restart. So that's one thing, right? There are plenty of places around here where, like, oh, I'm coming up to the crossing of this minor river. Now, holding the crossing is still valuable. You still need to trace supply if you're looking to keep supply. That has to go over a crossing, even for minor rivers. But if you're willing to attack and not be in attack supply or risk being caught out of supply, yeah, cross these minor rivers. Go attack across these minor rivers. If you can make the combat odds work for you, just go and do it. But I didn't realize that I could, and so all of my actions, whether it's movement or combat, were really based around this idea that I can only attack at the minor river crossings, and that is false. So a lot of German decision making was constrained by that, and would have continued to be, like trying to come back from that is a problem. Um, so that is certainly one aspect, and I probably should have understood that and committed it to memory better, because Zocs do extend across minor river hex sides, but not major ones. So like the Zoc, makes you think about combat ability. So that should have been a key thing. The other thing that matters here, is that I got wrong for both sides and really impacted both players in different ways, is that minor river hex sides. Well, I'm going to once again pull up the terrain chart, and I'm just going to show again my failure. So no matter what, for Rhine and Major, it's +1 movement point. Even at a crossing, it's always +1. You can see for the minor, it says +1 unless controlled crossing or bridgehead. And that is something that, again, in my, I don't know, my urgency to play, to not just to get going, I sort of overlooked that. And as I started messing with the rivers, I trapped my brain in the wrong thing, that it's +1 no matter what all the time for minor rivers. And that's not true. If you control both sides of the crossing, then you can, or you had control of both sides of the crossing, then you are not going to spend that extra movement point. So how does that really matter? Well, the really the sad thing, I guess, almost from um, uh, from a dial plan perspective, I had the Allies trying to get up to the dial plane line. Every time they came to one of these crossings, they were paying an extra movement point to get over the river, even at crossings. But they didn't need to do that. The Allies controlled all this territory. So they could have gotten further up into here sooner. Maybe that's bad for the Allies ultimately because of the dial plan special rules. But that is something that left some units further back here than they should have been. They should have been much closer. And that kind of hurt the Germans, but what are you going to do? And then the other way that hurt is that as the Allies were trying to come back, so this does hurt the Allies, as they were coming back, they were paying the costs to cross these rivers, again, crossings that they already controlled, so it was slowing them down getting to Dunkirk. That's a bit offset in my game because I was maybe not paying attention to the refugees, and so, okay, maybe, it's goofed up enough that I just don't really like the fact that I've fouled up that many things. For the Germans, this was also a problem because as I am trying to get my infantry to follow after the German armor, every time they're coming up on these minor river hex side crossings, they are paying the extra movement point. But these are ones that had already been taken by the Germans, had already been moved through, and there are control markers in this game that you can use to denote these important crossing areas, like, did you actually take the other side? Did you extend across and keep moving? So just as an example, like if I had continued to make the mistake that I was making, for me to get down to, say, here, this guy would have had to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe have 1 left over to do nothing. And instead, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I could do that. Maybe supply is a problem there, but you understand, like, I wasn't, what was happening is that these infantry units that have been trying to follow the armor, I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, the infantry is slower and it will take them more time to catch up, but they were even more slower than they should have been because I was having them pay extra movement points that they did not need to spend. Now, they still have to spend the extra to get over the Meuse. Totally valid and true. Um, but then I also had guys getting caught up here in the Ardennes where they were having to pay, 1, 2 to get through these minor rivers near Bastogne and just in the Ardennes in general. And that was very costly in terms of the movement. And I should not have had to do that because I had control of both sides of the river after the Germans worked their way through the Ardennes. So we have these things where, like, oh gosh, maybe I'm not going to meet my German timetable. Well, some of that's because my infantry can't catch up even the way that they are meant to. And so when I look at that from a game perspective, I just look at it and say, okay, I have fouled up enough that it does not make much sense to me to continue the game in the present state, because I think if I were to keep playing this, I think the Allies would just probably win based on their ability to pull units away, and then it would be a struggle for the Germans to catch up in victory points with the time that's left in the game. Um, and I have a much better sense of the game now, so that when it comes to things like the refugee placement, like the offensives through this area, I would feel a little bit more confident that I could play the game correctly, or at least better than I have, which I still think I did pretty good, but I've clearly made enough rules mistakes that, like, I don't feel like um, this is a game I should continue. I should set it up again and play it properly and be paying very special attention to these rules that I got wrong, to ensure that I don't make the same mistakes. So I hope that makes sense and connects with people. I've done this once before, um, maybe not quite to this degree, where I did a series on 1918, 1919 Storm in the West, where I played a few turns and clearly something was wrong. That one was strategic errors that I made, like actions I made that were just silly, I shouldn't have done. And I had to set up the game again to get a real game of it. Here it is just due to rule mistakes, but I think I will feel better about reviewing this game if I play it properly, not playing it improperly and having that affect my judgment of the game. That's on me, not on the game if I'm getting the rules wrong. So what I'm going to do from here is I will, take all this stuff, I will put it back together, put Humpty Dumpty back together again, get set up for turn 1 again, and then I will play. What I'll do another video. This video may be, I don't know, days away, but I will do another video, which will be a compilation of turn-by-turn reports for the first 3 or 4 turns of the second playthrough. And then from there, and we'll be talking about how the present game state compares to the first game attempt as we go. But that video will really, the attempt will be to have it cover turns 1 through 4 at a much lighter level than I normally would. Just talking about, here's turn 1, here's after turn 2, here's after turn 3, here's after turn 4, rather than after each action round. So I can just play through, focus on playing rather than talking, just play the game, give you guys the after action snippets, and then when we're about back at turn 5, I will revert back to the deeper level coverage, so you guys can see the second phase of the game, because I still feel like this game has 2 phases: the early phase of the sickle cut, and then there's the second phase of progressing down here. And I still, I think that'll still be interesting to see, but I definitely want to get a game that is proper and valid in terms of the rules. So I hope that makes sense, guys. If that's annoying, I do apologize. This is just going to be better for my experience so that I can review the game properly when it comes time for the review. I know a lot more people tend to watch the reviews and the introductions than the part 5 or part 6 or 7 or 8 of a series that I play. So you diehard folks that watch everything, this could be a bummer, but I really want to make sure that when it comes time for the game review, that is as authentic as it can be, and I don't feel like this playthrough would serve that review properly, and so I've just got to do it. The more I thought about it, when I realized the mistakes, the more I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to restart. I have to do this. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it here. Look for the turns 1 through 4 Redux video in the days to come. Hopefully, I'll have that put together relatively quickly, and you guys will get to enjoy that. And then we'll keep the train rolling on through the rest of Case Yellow 1940. So have a good one, guys. Take care. Keep gaming.